Welcome everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on a Friday evening. I'm Deepika. I am a volunteer at India DeepTech community, and also I lead community initiatives at Bloom Ventures. Just want to set up some few house rules before we begin. Today's session is being recorded, so the entire DeepTech startup ecosystem can benefit from the recording after the session. This session is planned for 60 minutes. We will take up questions during the session, but we'll also keep some time towards the end to take some questions that are not covered during the session. The questions that some of you submitted in your Google form have been shared with our moderator Gani already, and he will ensure that these are weaved into the session. In case you're tweeting about the session, do tag us. We are India DeepTech on LinkedIn and Twitter. A quick introduction of India DeepTech before I pass on the mic to Gani. India DeepTech is a pan-industry alliance to promote deep tech startups in India. It brings together all elements of the ecosystem in India under one roof, with the objective to enable creation and scaling of more startups focused on scientific research and engineering innovation. This alliance is formed by some of India's leading deep tech startups, incubators, and VC funds, which are involved in working with such startups. Today's panel is a part of India Deep Tech Liftoff, which has been a week-long showcase and with some of the best Indian deep tech companies. That's it. We have with us today's session will be moderated by Gani. And he'll be moderating a panel of wonderful experts from the deep tech ecosystem. A quick introduction of Gani. Gani has 30 plus years of experience in the semiconductor industry and is currently partner with Celesta Capital. Prior to this, he also co-founded Cosmic Circuits in 2005 and was CEO till its exit. Gani has also held senior management roles in Texas Instruments, including Director of Mixed Signal Technology Center and Director of LAN Engineering. Over to you, Gani. I'll let you take this from here and request you to please introduce the panelists and take over the session.
Okay, so thanks, Deepika. So before I start the panel, I want to take a minute and thank the India Deep Tech Forum. And special thanks to Arpit, Deepika, and the other volunteers for this, and the Bloom Ventures for encouraging the deep tech community and starting this initiative and doing it consistently well for quite a period of time. So if you look at India, for last 30 years, and we see three different phases. One is we had a lot of entrepreneurs in services company. We had entrepreneurs like Murthy Nandan building Infosys, Subrato, and Ashok Sudha building Mindtree. That was one phase. That is in the late 80s or 90s. And then we had new entrepreneurs for the internet-based riding on the local market of India, like Ola, Flipkart, etc. So the first one was services for the Western market. The second one was transforming with new business models for taking advantage of the large Indian market. But I think India is really good at the third phase, which is what I see now, which is with the deep tech. India is really a strong country in deep technology, and we have not done that well in entrepreneurship for the last 2 decades. But I see an incredible amount of transformation, and I believe this next decade we will see a lot of companies in the deep tech space. I just want to read out a couple of great companies and diverse sectors, right? In the space and military, we have Agnikul, we have Pixel. Agnikul is a rocket launching company coming from IIT Chennai, and Pixel is a satellite company for with a payload of multispectral camera. Galaxy, another startup from IIT Chennai with SAR and multispectral payload. ePlane from Professor Satya. Ideaforge from IIT Mumbai. Tonvo, which is a thermal imaging company. In the electric vehicle side, we have Ather. We have Ultraviolet, which is really doing fantastic in electric bikes. Great work by Professor Satya and Avishkar team with Hyperloop in IIT Chennai. Then if you look at green hydrogen, we have a company called Nutrace, which is coming with very innovative technology to do green hydrogen. And if you look at some of the efforts from SINE Lab and Poyni ma'am, we have great life science companies in Immunoac, solving blood cancer. Haystack, a genomic solution for solving sepsis. A Bugworks, which is largely a Bangalore-based company, creating a new antibiotic for solving superbugs. Then we have very different companies like Aviso Myco, which is creating organic melanin. We have companies starting in manufacturing by creating a very innovative 5-axis CNC machine in ethereal missions. And if you look at Fabless, great job by Cyril Systems. They've shipped more than 50 million ICs. And Aura Semiconductors valued more than $1.5 billion. IIT Chennai, Carnegie Mellon guys sitting here and conquering the China market. So it's a very diverse areas, and a lot of leadership has come. And we expect to see more and more happening. And I believe this decade, we will see from services to internet-based business model, conquering the local market, to deep technology companies, which may start with India market, but will definitely address global market. And with this, let me I'll introduce the panelists just before they talk. We have great panelists. We have two entrepreneurial panelists in Ankit and Professor Satya, and we have investor plus incubator in Karthee and Poyni. So let me start the panel with Ankit. As I was joking before, Ankit is very easy to introduce. All he has done is, IIT Mumbai graduation and Ideaforge. As an investor, we all like, I personally like entrepreneurs with tenacity. We all like the word drone today because drone has become very popular. But just imagine an entrepreneur and his team sticking with this idea for last 15 years. So he started thinking about drone 15 years back, and he has built now Ideaforge to be a #1 drone company in India. And the confidence Ideaforge gives to the Indian government is enormous. You have seen that message in last a few weeks that the Indian government stops the import of foreign drones. And this type of initiatives or regulations can happen only if they have confidence that great companies can be created here and which can address the needs of the India. So with this, let me hand over to Ankit, an entrepreneur who has proven to stay in deep tech, because deep tech requires tenacity in India. And he has done that well, and in SINE incubated company. Over to you, Ankit.
Thanks, Gani. Thank you for that kind and generous introduction. And of course, I always say that it's a deep privilege to have, been a part of IIT Bombay and having graduated from there, the kind of support that ecosystem gives, and the privilege of being a part of an incubation center, which was extremely kind on us in our early days when we were not even able to pay our rent on time. So I think, and of course, with the privilege of having investors like yourself and, Qualcomm when he was with, and Karthee when he was with Qualcomm, because it really proves that if you can survive in this ecosystem, good things can happen. And, we've had the privilege of some of them happening to us. What I'll do, Gani, is I'll share my screen and I will share a kind of a weird idea with everyone today. And I hope that, it tickles everyone's imagination and stays true to the topic of moving world into a new era. So I just wanted to, to begin my talk with something that will tickle everyone's imagination. I'm starting with a weird statement that says all your wares in the middle of nowhere. And I just wanted to, bring to everyone's notice that I think we are in a very brave new world where there are really unimaginable new possibilities that we are, actually seeing unfold in front of us. And when I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking that if you're talking about a new world era, then what would it be like? And, what is one of the visions that we can sort of share and try and discuss today, if we can. So I was just thinking that, are we in a position to, literally live completely independent of ground mobility and wired infra utilities that we all enjoy today? I don't think it is, straightforward to imagine that we can literally live completely independently right in the middle of nowhere. But if you just sort of think about it and you think about energy, I think we have sufficient off-grid technologies available today. Energy storage, we have a lot of things that are possible today where we can store enough energy to make sure that it services our needs for a 24/7 kind of an operational use. water. I think it's just phenomenal that you can make water from air. I think it's just amazing the kind of work that deep tech companies have done globally and even in India, where they've developed technologies where you literally don't need a source of water, a natural source of water, and you can generate water from air. Sanitation, internet, we have satellite internet, we have wireless communications, making sure that no cables need to be laid underground to deliver your need for communication with the world. Connectivity is, where it starts becoming interesting with the new possibility of aerial mobility and also aerial delivery. If all your goods can be literally delivered through the air, do you really need any ground infra? uh, and again, security, there is aerial surveillance available, kinetic options, and of course, in a small space that you want to create for yourself and live in, you can literally today, in my opinion, live entirely free from any infrastructure creation. But the question probably one would ask is that, is there even a need to reduce our dependence on this kind of infra that we need to just, sustain our lives in general? And I think it is important. I think we are doing massive damage to our environment in our need to build infra beyond the need for our living space or working space probably. And I think if we can in the future reduce our dependence, it will be a huge service we'll do to the environment. So I think, because I belong to the drone industry, I can just share what all the drone industry is potentially capable of doing in helping us reduce our dependence and give us a genuine source of creating a world where we could live completely unconnected by useless, idle ground infrastructure that we need to create today necessarily to meet most of our needs of daily existence. Um, Drones are used for surveillance, for mapping the area, making sure that we are precisely aware of what is happening. They can help you deliver great intelligence on the health condition of the assets that you build, or give you the evidence of how was it actually built vis-a-vis the plans that you put on paper. Can help you in delivering goods, which could essentially mean that you don't have to depend on a ground infra or on a you can reduce the time it takes to deliver something in specifically remote areas or hilly areas or some other environments. In agriculture, drones can be used to deliver intelligence for crop health. And if you can precisely locate where the problem is, you could go all the way down to making sure that you can deliver those aids which are essential for the sustenance of the crops in a very targeted manner, thereby improving the quality and the growth or the overall yield of the area that is under your monitoring using a drone. In mobility, drones are being envisaged, and we are going to see. And the example of one of the companies that's already in this space is what ePlane is doing under Professor Satya Chakrabarti, to ferry people around, to move cargo around, making sure that we can become more and more independent of the infra needs, or increase the capacity of what we can carry on the infra on ground today, because we can free up some of that space by moving it up in the air. And of course, in entertainment as well, drones are doing a great job of covering a lot of events and situations or in media and entertainment, but also in light shows. We recently saw a light show that happened by an Indian company, which was a huge pride and joy for all of us all across the country. So I just wanted to throw some light on what work is being done in India in that space. We today definitely build best-in-class surveillance platforms for micro and small category of drones, and these platforms are competing with the best in the world and are able to make sure that we can make that claim with a fairly high confidence in our ability as a nation. In mapping, again, we are delivering best-in-class products, and today some of these products are actually being utilized for mapping, for the largest mapping exercise in the world, where the government of India is mapping all the villages in the country. Almost all 660,000 villages are being mapped using drones entirely. And that's an exercise that's currently live in India. Drone as a service, again, is an area where India is already deploying drones for doing inspections for mobile towers, for chimneys, high tension electric poles. In delivery, we are experimenting a lot in remote areas, in hilly areas, and some experiments like the recently announced tender by Swiggy, if every one of you is aware, doing that experiment in cities. In agriculture, drones are being used in a big way for doing spraying experiments across the country. And we also have work that is happening in entertainment where we have a lot of drones that so we actually have very little drones which are in the photography space, and that's because in India we don't envisage a huge consumer market for drones. We actually envisage a more enterprise-oriented market for drones because we don't expect that a lot of people will buy a lakh, 2 lakh rupee worth drone for merely their entertainment. And that's the reason why, as a nation and as the drone ecosystem, we have never focused on that area. We've largely focused on enterprise systems. But we recently saw a huge effort in terms of the drone light show that we saw, which is again very, very closely connected to entertainment. I'll just, and of course, in mobility, we have not just delivery, but we have Professor Satya's company leading the way on the urban air mobility space. We have another startup in Chennai itself, which is again looking at the same space. So I think we have a lot of efforts going across most of the value chains that can be imagined today with drones. And these are some of the examples of the kind of output you get from drones. You basically get the God's view of everything, be it surveillance, be it crowd monitoring, disaster management, fire emergencies, traffic monitoring, be it in urban planning, in creating 3D models of the world, making sure that you can plan your projects in a very precise manner and reduce the expenses or the surprises that you'll see in the future, or for agriculture. And these are very few examples that I can show right now, but these are some of the ideas that I want just to put out there and show that this is actually all happening today in our country on a daily basis. To just share some light on what Ideaforge is doing in that effort, just like to share that our customers have probably completed over 220,000 missions on our own drones, and today every 6 minutes one Ideaforge drone takes off in our country for either doing surveillance or a mapping use case where it is creating land records for our farmers. I also wanted to share that in general, there is a unique advantage of building drones in our country because our country has a very diverse geography. And because of that diverse geography, we are able to build systems which can fly at the highest potential altitudes where the drones are needed to be deployed, or in some of the most extreme environments in the desert areas of Rajasthan or in the creek and other areas in our country. So I think we have a unique advantage that we can leverage and build world-class products out of. I think that India has the chops, and today we are sitting on an opportunity where we can lead in the Jetsons age. Jetsons age. Thank you, everyone.
Super. Thank you, Ankit. Uh, 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 so our next presenter would be Karthee. So if you look at the deep tech ecosystem, if you leave China, the three regions which are kind of role models, and I would say two are really role models, and one we are coming up. One is the Bay Area ecosystem, and the second is the Israel ecosystem. And upcoming, I would think would be a champion in the next decade would be the India. And Karthee has a unique experience of spending time in India and also in Bay Area. So he's the managing director of MFV Ventures, which is a deep tech venture fund, and he sits in Silicon Valley, and he invests, I believe, both in US and in India. And before that, he spent 11 years in Qualcomm as a corporate VP, and he was one of the lead investor in several of the companies in India, including Ideaforge. We kind of supported at a time when drone was not very popular in India. So Karthee, over to you.
Thanks, Gani. Great to join all of you. It's we are seeing. I'm calling in from Palo Alto, right next to Stanford University, and we're going through the polar chill here. The temperature outside is -1 degree centigrade, so it's an interesting weather here. Nevertheless, great to join all of you. Right, like Gani pointed out, we are an early stage deep tech fund. I won't take too much of the time that's allocated to me. I think I want to highlight a few areas or a few things about deep tech and what's the opportunity for India. We invest globally because deep tech is really global, and we have done already a couple of companies out of India, Athi Motors and Sun Mobility, in the EV space and autonomous kind of robot space. We continue to look at companies across the globe. I have a few slides to kind of highlight a few things that may not be obvious to folks, so maybe I'll start there. And then I'm happy to answer questions and look forward to actually a panel discussion here rather than my kind of sermon here. So anyway, but let me just start with a quick few slides of presentation. So yeah, like I said, we are an early stage deep tech fund. We focus on kind of companies with fundamental technologies that will transform industries. So let me start with first set of maybe like misnomers or people have like differing opinions about what deep tech is and what value it is that it can generate. It's not a niche area. It's not something that's just maybe interesting for the longer term and maybe a potential down the line. I think it's actually an area that's here and now. And just in the last 5 years, these are just we just looked at areas that have come up in the last 5 years, companies that have come up in the last 5 years. And just we looked at companies that have already reached a value of $1 billion or more. And this is just in US, Western Europe, and Israel. India companies are not there yet, but I think it'll be there soon. And just in deep tech, there's about $500 billion worth of value have been created by these companies, and more now. Actually, by the time this slide was done, it was like a few months ago. Now it's about $520 billion. So across various sectors, this is a large space that can create like huge assets. The second misnomer that people have is that it takes a long time. Obviously some of the entrepreneurs have to go through a lot of grit and markets not developing at the pace that you want it to develop. But that does not mean that deep tech generally takes a longer time or it takes a lot of capital. So we analyze the capital and the time it takes to actually build a deep tech company. And it's roughly about five years for a deep tech company to become $1 billion company. And then it takes about $100 million or so, which are still within the norms of how other sectors are in terms of capital and the time requirements. So one of the myths that we need to break out is that that deep tech companies just take too long. Obviously, some of them will. We have testament to that in our panel here as well. But it doesn't mean that it always takes that long, and it also doesn't mean that it takes a lot of capital either. And then Gani asked me to do some of the interesting areas for deep tech. So I'll talk about a few of the things that we see as over the next few years, like very interesting places for deep tech. One is we call it the broader computing ecosystem. I think what has happened in the last few years is that computing has gone through a fundamental paradigm shift with the emergence of AI, and then now with quantum. And quantum is a completely different ball game compared to any form of computing we have seen so far. And I think that provides a lot of opportunities for to innovate and to actually break through. So in terms of deep tech areas, we look at computing as one broader umbrella area that actually provides significant room for growth and room for innovative companies to come up. The second is autonomy and robotics. So this is not completely new. This has been happening over the last maybe 5-6 years. It started with transportation with autonomous cars, and then the evolution of robotics. I think robotics has been around for a while, but I think the time is today with the cost of robots and the efficiency of these robots and the type of tasks these robots can do getting better and better. We see that there's a lot more opportunity for automation, autonomy, and robotics to get deployed in different areas. And this is another area that India can play a huge role. We obviously invested in one of the companies in the space, and we're seeing more companies coming out in this area. The third is space. I spent a lot of time at Qualcomm. Qualcomm was started as a kind of a space communication company before it became a kind of a CDMA and wireless communication company. And at Qualcomm, we invested in Spire, which was a satellites for Earth observation, and then we obviously invested in OneWeb, which is for space communication. So we looked at several of these companies. I think what we are seeing is the next generation of what would happen in space. So I think the rocket launchers and satellites are the first generation, but I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in data, components, additional layers of things like manufacturing that could happen in space. So I think that's a very exciting ecosystem around space that I think will be driven largely by the DeepTech community. The other area is the synthetic computational biology. This is basically, it's not biotech, but this is the area of biology where a lot more of computational or electrical engineering gets intersected with biology. So whether that's a synthetic biology or a computational biology, the applications are endless, all the way from climate sustainability to new way of drug discovery. And this is one of the biggest areas of focus for DeepTech entrepreneurs, and it brings together 2 or 3 fields into a solution. And so that's another area that I think India could do really well. And then final thing is this climate and sustainability. I think there's a renewed focus in terms of addressing sustainability issues and then solving some of the climate problems that we have. Some of us are old enough to go through the Clean Tech 1.0 scars from 2008, but I think there is a much more renewed focus, and there's a wider variety of companies and technologies that are being addressed through this climate and sustainability. And a lot of the DeepTech community will need to step up on it to solve some of these problems. There are obviously trading and other carbon trading and other solutions, software solutions that are being provided to address this issue. But I think DeepTech community really has to be the one that has to come up with solutions, whether it's for energy, battery technologies, grid optimization, and all those things that has to be driven by DeepTech community. I'll just stop here in terms of what do I think. We have seen the India ecosystem emerge in the last 20 years. The first part of it was largely driven by kind of Indian consumer, and it's still evolving. And the 2020s was a decade of kind of the Indian SaaS or the software ecosystem delivering for the world. I think 2020s will be the decade for Indian deep tech. And deep tech is not regional. Deep tech is really global. So if you have a great technology, you have a great technology in Bangalore or Boston or Tokyo. Indian deep tech startups and Indian deep tech companies would be supplying to the global market. So if you're a deep tech entrepreneur, the way you want to think about it is that think global right from day one. You might have a local customer initially to figure out your technology, but think global right from day one. And then secondly, harness the developed markets. Developed markets have access to a lot of middle management, potential customers, early adopter customers, funding. So harness the developed markets, and that's one of the roles that we play as MVF Partners in working with startups in India. With that, I'll stop, and I will look to hear from other panelists as well, and then I'm glad to have a discussion after everybody presents. Thank you.
Super, Karthee. Thank you very much. Completely in line that deep tech companies have to start think globally right from the first day. And it is the decade of the India's decade. Well, initially we started by servicing the Western market. Then we took advantage of the Indian market by providing solutions. And now we will start giving product solutions, hopefully with the deep tech space, to the global community. And some of the areas you touched on, I'm sure Poyni ma'am and Professor Satya are addressing those areas, and I hope they will address it also in their session. Okay, so see, as an investor, I'm always, I have some concerns with, not concerns, I have some interesting experiences with startups from academic institutions, especially with professors, right? They'll call you for a business plan meeting, and 1 minute will be discussed on business, and the next 59 minutes will be completely on technology. So it's always it's a very technology and deep tech oriented startups that get started from the institutions by professors. But Poyni ma'am is very different, right? She can give a seminar on focus and business case to the venture funds. She's so focused that even today she told that why should we speak 8 minutes per panelist? Why not cut it to 5 minutes? So it's a great privilege for me to know Poyni ma'am. She's the CEO of SINE Lab in IIT Mumbai, which has incubated some exceptionally great companies, including Ideaforge, Sedamac, Immunoac, Haystack, etc. And she's also a board advisor to the IIT Jammu Incubation Center. And before that, she spent a time as a legal and corporate compliance as a senior vice president for ICICI Securities. With this, Poyni ma'am.
Thank you, Gani, for such a kind introduction. First of all, I'm not a professor. I'm not even an engineer or science person. So someone, calls me professor, I feel really, really very flattered. Yeah. But having said that, yeah, really, it's wonderful to be part of this panel session with the colleagues here. Yeah, Ankit, we have worked together, seen his journey. Very, very great feeling when I hear him or any of his colleagues on Ideaforge story, starting with a simple mechanical product and then pivoting into drone in a time where it was not really heard of at all. And arguably the best drone that he and his team has built in his, capacity. So it feels very, very proud to basically, have associated with the companies like his. Also, since we are talking about Gani, entering new era, kind of a philosophical issue, point here that especially Ideaforge team, one of the most ideal team that I have seen at a skill set level and at an ethics level, and that's where they have built a startup into organization. It's wonderful to see them. And I'm sure there are many such startups, but since this is a very, very closer home, so I thought I'll mention this aspect. Yeah. It's also good to know, when I was hearing Karthee about availability of fund and then give fund in the sense in deep tech startup, and also seemingly perceived long gestation period, but what he mentioned, it takes just 5 to 6 years. Maybe in India market it could be 7 to 8 years, but you can build an organization, fund is available. So extremely encouraging sign here. But deep tech to me is going beyond computing or horizontal technologies like AI, ML, or robotics kind of thing. You see them even in non-computing areas like material science, for example, yeah, or in biomaterial or bioscience kind. So for me, deep tech is actually based on a fundamental R&D, something basically which has ability to produce fundamental IPs, not really incremental IPs, and you come out with a product out there, and it across basically, across the segment, there is a huge potential out there. And as Karthee mentioned, there are so many, in fact, Ankit mentioned about so many use cases of drone. Karthee mentioned so many, intervention of deep tech in so many other areas out there. And that's where I think academia also basically can contribute or are contributing in a great manner. So I belong to an incubator linked to academia, IIT Bombay. So I'll focus in a very, very limited manner, what is happening, at least in I'll limit to only IIT Bombay, but what is happening in IIT Bombay across various segments here. So and just hold on, I'll try to screen my share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, as I said, I'll limit my conversation right now just to role of academia in promoting deep tech startup and what are the current trends are right now. Uh, you know, uh, yes, we all know they drive R&D, innovation, skill building. They are the ideal place to drive deep tech innovations. But very interestingly, now trend within academia is also changing. If you just look at maybe 10 years back, uh, R&D used to happen within the academic setup, and to a large extent, it would remain within the labs, or to some extent, it will go to industry for in form of licensing and so on and so forth. But just within a last 5-7 years, you see like there are so many interdisciplinary researches are happening, like material with bioscience, material with energy, uh, uh, robotics, basically across the segment. So lots of interdisciplinary research is happening in academic center. There's an increasing focus on impact creation, be it in climate, be it in healthcare, be it in defense, be it in securities, genomics. Like you talk about it, and there is an increasing focus in on impact creation. Much of lots of interest is there even in commercializable research and innovation. So not really working in an area which is my area of expertise, or this is my area of interest and I'm doing it, but really want to bring it out of the lab, and then collaboration around that. Yeah. Academia hosting incubators. So there is a direct basically roadmap to commercialization. And they also now enable access to technical resources for the startup, which is very, very important for deep tech startup, because R&D, strong research and innovation is very, very critical for deep tech or strong tech or deep science companies. And they are opening up their resources for startups to basically, leverage the one way it is lab, another way when it talent level as well as expertise level. Yeah. Again, as I mentioned, deep tech cut across various engineering and science disciplines. Yeah. It takes extensive R&D, and academia minimize technical risk when it comes to basically, deep tech startup, especially where the technology risk is a significant risk. Some of the example that we are tracking within the institute or in deep tech space, like for example, like I told you about non-computing side of thing, right? Healthcare, there are like innovations and research going on in artificial bone material for bio application. In fact, this is the material ready with regulatory approval, and it is being basically at a trial level. It is being tried in AIMS. So this is one example. Climate tech, yeah. So carbon capture technology at the source, you store them, and then you convert into usable value-added product as and when you desire. This is very, very deep tech technology, again, non-computing side. Then there are, of course, sensor, like, some of the research or innovation work going on is wearable dry EEG electrodes so flexible electrodes for neuromonitoring application. Extremely niche area, very, very high-tech and deep science product, which can be implanted in your brain. In fact, team is ready to start a company here. Yeah, we have been hearing a lot about need of semiconductor capability in the country. Last week we heard about like 5 proposals going on, or going to basically government. This area we actually missed bus in initial day, but again, we are somehow trying our efforts in there. IIT Madras has some kind of microprocessors, that is some activity going on around microprocessor development. Even IIT Bombay has one particular group which has developed fully indigenously designed and fabricated, microprocessor together with the software tools associated with the processor, completely indigenous technology. And there is another group is using this microprocessor to create a communication system to receive signals from our IRNSS satellites. That's NAVIC system. Yeah. Very good, basically, applicable, applied research activity going on, and they are already doing collaborating work with ISROs here. Yeah. That's indigenous semiconductor memory technology that got developed at IIT Bombay. So I think I know for sure similar work is going on at IIT Madras also in the pretty much similar area. So, since you mentioned, Gani, about that, I should not limit myself to just mobility area. So I'm also giving a broad sense about kind of the startup and innovations that we are tracking for venture creation. So you already mentioned about Immunoac. This is the first company who is doing human trial for cancer therapy in India using immunotherapy. Very, very interesting company. Yeah, they are already, their technology is already infused in 10 patients, and they are doing basically, giving very, very positive result. Extremely high deep science company, if you really look at it. There's a company called N Dimension that we are incubating or supporting here. They use simple X-ray images to identify abnormality in lungs to begin with, and then there are other cancer detections that they are working on. Gani is already mentioned about Hestech. This is the company in healthcare. It's a genomics technology for personalized clinical decision diagnostics as well as therapy around them. Yeah. In mobility side, new materials are getting innovated. So Virya battery, it has developed it's a research project coming out of IIT Bombay, or spun out of IIT Bombay. They have developed an innovative material that prevents dendrite formation in battery, and hence they make battery very safe, fire preventive, as well as it enhances the life of the battery. There are robotics, autonomous vehicle that we are supporting, and all these basically autonomous vehicle are on the field in factory shop or on a large industrial complex. Some of the graduate company, I need not speak about the Ideaforge, you already heard them. There's a company called Sedimec. They were one of the very early, again, strong DeepTech technology, which make engine control system for small engines and powertrains. Again, they export their products in Europe and beyond now. Atombug, again, SINE associated company. It's actually a consumer product company. They make fan, but the technology they use is so disruptive. They actually save energy up to 65% right on the wall. Yeah. So these are the few technology that we have supported in DeepTech. Even DeepTech became very mainstream, phrase to use. Yeah. Just to speak ecosystem around that is basically become it's enabling ecosystem which is enabling all these deep tech innovations as well as ventures, academia, incubator, government, investor, industry in India now, they are really playing their role very aggressively. There is a strong impetus from government in indigenization as well as providing early capital. They fund academia, they fund incubator sitting academia to support innovation coming out of academia as well as basically, they are developed by entrepreneurs and innovators. Yeah. And incubators and academia are becoming basically a very central point which connect the whole ecosystem. So I'll stop here, Gani, and we'll be happy to interact as we go along.
Super. Thank you, Poyni ma'am. As you started, sometimes people think deep tech is all about AI ML, but it's far more than that. There's a lot of fundamental work that happens in materials, and we have invested in a company called Biomason, which produces the cement using biological process. Also invested in another company which is creating the next generation organic LED emitter, and these are all real deep tech because they start with 100 plus patents to begin with. And also Atamberg from SINE is a household name now. I mean, my house, all the fans is run by BLDC motors of Atamberg. I'm sure Ideaforge office is also using Gorilla fans from Atamberg. And Sedamac, of course, we know the impact that they have on the two-wheeler industry plus generators, etc. So the next speaker is Professor Satya. I have a word of caution before that. I met Professor Satya a couple of weeks back. And a 10 minutes conversation with Professor Satya, you feel like you have to resign your job and join him. He's so inspiring. And, he's kind of starting the next generation startups, I would say. He's dreaming real big. In all his startups have fundamental disruption. And he did his BTech in IIT Chennai, PhD in Georgia Institute of Technology. And he's been teaching in IIT Chennai for the last 24 years in the aerospace. And he's the head of the National Center for Combustion Lab, and a pioneer behind many of the startups like Agnikul, ePlane, and several others. Over to you, Professor Satya.
Thanks very much, Gani. Let me just see if I can share screen right away. I guess, yeah. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, let me see if I can go full screen and see if you can still see it. Can you see it?
We do.
Okay, so I have like very little time. So what I'm going to do is I have like about 10 or 11 slides. I'm going to directly go to the last couple of slides, excluding the thank you slide, of course. So I'm going to spend like exactly 1 to 2 seconds per slide. So what I'm talking about is what you basically introduced me on, that the National Center for Combustion R&D started out as Combustion R&D Center, but we are now actually housing a lot of projects and startups and ideating things. So that's what this is going to be talking about. So I'm just going to spend only enough time to sort of unveil this laundry list of ideas that we are actually working on. So at the bottom, you can actually see there are a whole bunch of these asterisk marks that are incorporated, soon to be incorporated. Some of them are part of some of the other startups, and some are still under ideation. The ones at the bottom are more of ideation and so on. I'm not the only one who is involved in this. There are a few other faculty who are also doing these things, either along with me or independently. So, so the point essentially is that there is like a lot more that you can expect coming out of what we are doing, and it's not necessarily to do with combustion or mobility, whatever actually creates societal impact, which is a common thread that you will see. So this slide talks about Agnikul. I think one of the things that I want to highlight here is the most integrated 3D printed rockets that we're developing in the world. And on the left-hand side, we have some R&D work that was done in the lab that's translating into with the product that we are talking about in the startup. I want to actually emphasize that there is very strong business case in all of these things, which I'm not highlighting, but just want to show that. ePlane essentially has some tech that we have actually done an R&D on before we actually are pushing into product development, and that's a process that's been going on. Here we are basically contending that we have the most compact electric VTOL taxi ever. So the operative word is most, as in we want to actually say we are doing the most this or the most that. And I want to actually emphasize that for a good reason that will come up later. Aerostrubilose is actually making the most fuel agnostic micro gas turbine based turbine trucks, EV trucks. And this is again based on a patented lean burner developed that in NGCRD. X2Fuels is actually developing waste to fuel here, and this is again done by Professor Vinnu, my colleague, and there are some combinations of these that will also be very useful to think about, but I'm not going to discuss that. Gilaxai is actually the most sensor integrated and edge computing satellite that we are developing. So these are all like flashes, as you can say. And Avishkar at the moment is actually a student group that's the Asia's best through the years, getting a lot of accolades. You will actually see them do something fantastic about a 0.5 kilometer long tube to be set up, a vacuum tube to be set up in our new campus. This is now leading to a new startup called Tutor Hyperloop that has actually been already incorporated and incubated, and it's now going out to raise funds and so on. So these are the last couple of slides, the next two slides, right? So there is an underlying theme that is actually connecting all of these things. This sort of emerged after the fact. This was not essentially contemplated ahead of time, and I could actually come up with a name called defrastructure, a word that I coined. Let me just explain that in this particular slide. So what I would like to say, I think Karthee was talking about this, about needing a lot of infrastructure as a developing country. So what we want to do with what we are trying to do here is to challenge the notion that we need large infrastructure for a country to develop. High-tech products that are small but produced in large numbers can easily compensate. So large scale doesn't have to be huge products. It has to be small products that are very, very smart. So small rockets, small planes, small engines, small waste to fuel units. Large scale is not about big things, but also could be about large number of units of small things, which is essentially distributed everything, right? So you distribute airports to become your rooftops, is like what ePlane tries to do and so on. So this is very modular, it's on demand, it is distributed, it's affordable technology and can enable development fairly rapidly. And this is also what we call as democratizing technology. This is not inferior tech at all, because if you have to actually make a small engine that can be put on a truck instead of a big engine that goes on a plane, that's not easy, right? It's actually far superior. So better, it is actually possible to develop out of academia and their startups, right? I don't need to be a GE to make an engine anymore. I can actually do this out of IIT Madras, right? So why is this happening? First of all, metal 3D printing, carbon composites, batteries, simulation capabilities, now of etc. offer a level playing field for startups to take on big tasks with small products. The small products primarily comes from the fact that we can actually start with small investments and still show products within a very short time. That's essentially why we are doing small products, but they need to have a business case, they need to have their markets, they need to have their go-to-market strategy. All of that stuff is equally important for this as anything else. In fact, the big products, they don't even care. They will NASA will do big things, or like a big company will actually bet on something big and they will collapse. All of that stuff is actually part of the course, not for startups. Startups, we have to actually be extremely careful. So small products are actually very, very important. Now, why this is actually important for academia? This is actually the way by which premier institutions can directly contribute to nation building and its economic growth in a sustainable manner. Engineering and technology is all about product development. So the research that we do should actually translate to products. If it doesn't, then we are probably just wasting our time. Point essentially is, if somebody asks the question, what is actually IIT Madras's contribution to India's GDP and its GDP growth? What is like the percentage basis points that we are contributing? I think what the best thing we can actually show is the products, because GDP is a gross domestic product, right? So that's very, very important. And the research can actually then be done for the problems that need to be tackled in improving these products. So we need to actually come up with research questions that are derived from this product development approach. And this will ensure our students stay back in our country, because this is the market that they would want to serve. So all of these things actually come from here. So all of that said, what are the three features that I have found recurring as a theme in our startups is, first of all, there is absolutely no compromise on an innovation quotient. We can't copy something else that's being done. We have to show that we are better. That's the reason why we always say, I'm the most this or the most that and most so on, right? So we have to actually show that we are world's best in at least one particular thing that matters to business. It's not about just being most better in tech. It's not about tech at all. It's about business. You have to show that you are actually the most something that actually will help you with the business that makes you a world leader. So it's all about a global company that comes out of every one of these things should actually be a global company that comes out of India. And it is because it has this cutting edge, it has this entry barrier, it has actually lab scale research that's been done. It's converting TRL 1 to 3 to TRL 4 to 6, which is the valley of death, right? And that's where funding is quite important. And it needs to have a strong business case. It has to have its own market, the small products that we're talking about, right? Frugal engineering is something that is actually an India play, but it's not just about that, right? The innovation that we do is the one that needs to lead to frugality. Otherwise, we are not really talking about a significant advantage that you have a business edge on, besides being like a market leader in the world, right? Doing something new, you actually do this much more frugally. That makes it like a wow, right? The other wow factor is for the world to actually start taking notice of India. All of these things coming out of India is actually going to be a wow factor in itself, right? It will become world news. And that's what we are actually trying to push from what we are trying to do. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, Professor Satya. So, I know we are really running late. I apologize for that. But one thing I would recommend is anybody visiting Chennai, Madras, please take a minute and visit IIT Madras Research Park and professors, the combustion lab, and the kind of innovation and the diversity of the innovations is really inspiring. And I completely agree that I think all the panelists said that we have to be globally competitive, and frugal engineering will definitely help India to differentiate from a market, ecosystem like US and Israel, which in my opinion is pretty advanced. And we will catch up. And as every panelist feel that this decade will be our deep tech decade, and that great work done by Professor Satya and his team. So with this, let me jump to at least few questions. I'm again sorry that we are kind of delayed significantly. So why don't Professor Satya and Poyni ma'am, why don't you address this question? What is the funding environment for Indian deep tech startups? You have a lot of incubators. You have some incubators. You're having a lot of deep tech startups. But from there, are you getting encouragement from the seed investors, Series A investors? Please talk on that. Professor Satya first.
Yeah, I think with the last 4 or 5 years that I've seen, there is definitely a lot of engagement that many funds are actually showing. And there is definitely a lot of interest in deep tech. There is belief system that is actually evolving here. So all of that stuff is looking definitely positive. That said, I think there are two issues here. One is, we should actually be, first of all, solving a real problem, right, which has some impact. So, and the impact has to be measured in terms of market size, not just in India, but also globally. Maybe this specific geographies that will take note of what we are trying to do, which is more India type, right? So, I've seen, like, for example, Americans actually don't change. It takes a lot of time for them to actually change. So don't even bother about them. Try to see if you can actually get other markets, because there are a lot of other people around, right? So you have to show global competence, global markets, a global business case coming out of India. That's very, very important. Next problem then is for the investors. We have to be able to explain the tech that we are working on. Okay, and we should be able to do like a 101 on them that actually is very, very convincing. Many times we have the first problem that we are not really solving a impactful pain point problem that is real, which has a good market and it will create impact. The second thing is, what is the tech that can be actually dumbed down to tell investors this is actually the differentiator and this is the reason why there'll be a barrier. So if you are able to crack these two things, I think we will have investors lining up more and more, like what's been happening the last 3-4 years.
Okay, but do you see now, do you see a more seed stage investors coming in and Series A investors coming in? Because US is abundance of angel investors to seed investors, which lifts their startup.
Not as much as we would like, but it's happening. So we want to be very hopeful, but it's been increasing. So I can't complain a lot.
Okay, and I hope people like Karthee will step up and invest more and more in India with the deep tech ecosystem. Poyni ma'am, do you have any words on this, on some of your incubating startups? How do they find, is it hard for them to raise money?
Yeah, so I think I fully agree with Professor Satya that investment environment is definitely improving a lot. In fact, it has improved a lot, and you see Even several angel investors and family office funds are also getting interested in synergistic area as well as deep tech startup. But there's one thing I think, Gani, I want to highlight here is that this is story around like past 6-7 years. If you really look at investment scenario when investors in the country were not so much active in terms of money as well as in terms of number. I think it was government who stepped in and created, very, very early stage funding. Up to 1 crore, it's not a small money for a startup to access, anything from 20 lakh to 1 crore kind of funding in early stage of life to build a product. So I think government also has played a very, very conducive role here. While I say that investment scenario is improving here, investors are also looking at some kind of, maturity, proof of concept, traction, so on and so forth. So you still have a challenge to get from idea to POC level to get that funding available. I think government is filling that gap. So this is one thing that I would like to add here.
Okay, got it. Okay, so Ankit, next question to you. What are the challenges for hiring and retaining talent for deep tech companies? The startups, you guys pay less and make us work way higher than others. How do you do it, and how did you do it in Ideaforge?
Gani, I think it's a misnomer that we pay less. Nobody comes if we pay less these days. Everyone's demanding maybe 2x. But I think there is a charm today, and parents also don't mind kids taking chances with startups because they genuinely see that there is wealth creation happening in the Indian startup ecosystem. So broadly, I would say that having a nice, conducive family environment is helping in people actually accepting jobs in young startups and companies who are not yet listed or popularly known in the market. A lot of people are jumping ship from large industries because they don't see wealth creation happening there, and if they've really built a stack of work that can be valued elsewhere, they try to make sure that they can join a company where they can add significantly larger value. But to be honest, it is not a really, I would say, a story of a lot of free availability of talent today. There is a war happening, particularly with the flood of money that's out there in the market right now. The actual talent capability to price disruption has happened in the last, I would say, 6 months to a year. And, I'm actually a little scared of what will happen when the delivery doesn't happen. Right, that's my biggest issue, because the talent that's getting valued right now, it's not necessarily the talent that you can evidently see delivering something commensurate to the jump that we are seeing. But it could be a correction cycle, and it may so happen that things remain flat for a while. But I do see that the base of expense that everyone's doing in talent is going to go up, and people are not willing to compromise on the base overall. But I think people are significantly more open now, and we don't see resistance to join, but we do see resistance in terms of competing offers available in the market in that broad sense.
Got it. And yeah, some of the startups as deep tech startups become very successful. I think that's, hopefully that it'll fuel more and more talented people to join deep tech startups. Karthee, for you, you are, just personally for me also, I want to understand. I look at startups from US. I spend quite some time in Japan universities, and I also spend time with the Indian entrepreneurs in deep tech. Since you spend actively time in both US and in India, what do you see as the differences? I'm sure we are in the learning curve, and I strongly believe that we'll catch up and do very well. We also have certain areas of gaps. Not only from capital in terms of the other areas, the various areas of building a deep tech company. What do you see as a challenge between a company in the Bay Area and in India? And what advice you have for the Indian deep tech companies?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of time, right? I think when we started looking at India for investments in 2006, some of us were looking at investments at the time. it was primarily services startups. You couldn't even see product startups, let alone kind of, innovative product startups, but that's not the case today, right? So I think a lot of it is a matter of time, right? So I think the ecosystem is going to only develop and better entrepreneurs are going to come out, better ideas are going to come out, right? So it's a matter of time. So we need to understand that, right? I think in the deep tech, I think what I pointed out is that you have to think global, right? I think there's no regional deep tech in my mind, right? Like if there's a good technology, if it's a good RF technology, it's a good RF technology for Boston or Bangalore or Tokyo or wherever it is, right? So if you're starting something in India, you should think about it globally, right? And then the idea of like harnessing the entire ecosystem should be the case, right? Like we live in a world where we should not try to go reinvent the wheel, right? So those are the areas where I would explore our entrepreneurs out of India to take a hard look at things, right? Like, so we should not be reinventing the wheel. We should try to see what will drive what technology they build or what product they build will drive the global market, or solve problems with the global market, and then harness the whole ecosystem, right? So, but it's happening faster and faster, and so we are seeing companies that are out of India selling into the US market really well. So I think we were making great strides, right? I think, but I think that these aspects need to be always thought about. And I think I want to just point out what Satya pointed out and even Poyni ma'am pointed out, which is that it cannot be incremental, right? Like deep tech cannot be incremental, right? Like, other things can be incremental, but in deep tech, if you're not fundamentally, you're 10x better, or you're fundamentally going one order of magnitude better, you are already falling behind the curve, right? So it cannot be a copy of, this worked there, so let me try this here type of a thing, right? So it has to be a fundamentally leap of bounds as well. And the second, the final thing that I'll just say, this is for deep tech entrepreneurs all over the world, is that you tend to think technology first and then the business problem later, because first of all, you got to put, for product market fit, there is a bunch of technology buildup that needs to. So a lot of the focus early on is in technology. Sometimes this market fit just completely gets forgotten. So a lot of times deep tech entrepreneurs just first build a hammer and try to go look for nails to go ram it on, right? So avoid that. But that's not just the case for Indian deep tech entrepreneurs. That's the problem that I see with deep tech entrepreneurs all over the world. And that's the consistent feedback that they give. So, don't just first build a hammer to see what kind of nail I can go find ram it on. Right? Anyway, I'll stop there. Thanks.
To me, it's very refreshing to see Professor Satya, Poyni ma'am. Poyni ma'am deals with all the professors and does startups. So from her perspective, she's dealing with the academic institutions, academic professors with startups. It's refreshing to see both of them stressing on business first. Of course, technology is absolutely the gating element for deep tech, but you validate it with a good business case. And I see this consistently coming out from both this panelists. Okay, so you know what, we are really running late, and I think it's, so I'm just going to end this with a last question. Actually, it's an advice. I want each panelist to tell one advice for an Indian deep tech founder. What do you think we should do? Start with Ankit.
Don't do it if you don't think that you can persevere through the hardships.
Repeat that, Ankit, please.
Don't do it if you don't think you can persevere through the hardships.
Tenacity, absolutely. Okay, Satya, please.
Is it okay to just say ditto?
Of course. Tenacity is the common stuff. Yeah, please, Poyni ma'am.
Actually, I would have liked to say ditto, but yeah, something similar on that there is no shortcut to build an organization, certainly not for deep tech organization.
I think I can echo that by saying it slightly differently. It's one thing to actually make a product, another thing is to make a company. They are two different things. And that's one of those things that deep tech guys probably don't get it. So they get too married to the product, they probably don't think about the company. So company culture, all of that stuff should come right from.
So what is the question, Gani? This is the advice to the entrepreneurs?
Yeah. One critical advice you would give to a deep tech founder.
And okay, so mine will be slightly on the other end of the spectrum. It's that be inspiring. I think the world actually moves because of deep tech. All the applications that people build are all because of the big changes that actually deep tech drives. And I've seen through 3 or 4 generations of these shifts. So you guys are driving the shifts of this technology industry. So, think big, be inspiring.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all panelists.